Salute, Nick Streets. The New York Knicks winning streak is snapped at Madison Square Garden. The Knicks lose their first game at home, man, to a terrible defensive display and a feisty Orlando Magic team that played prison ball all night. And the New York Knicks failed to adjust. And we're going to break it down. We're going to get the thoughts of the fan base and as we react to this loss, this frustrating loss. And the New York Knicks will have to get right as they have one more game at home against the Orlando Magic. And they will obviously then have to go to Miami after this loss to Orlando Magic, right? One more home game against the Miami Heat and then over to the Heat territory. But man, defensively, man, absolutely terrible. And the New York Knicks were fouling and unable to stay out of foul trouble and defend. No Paolo Banchero after the first quarter. And it was really sickening to watch everyone get in foul trouble and just unable to deal with the physicality and the size, I thought, of the Orlando Magic, right? So welcome in to the stream, everyone. And obviously we're going to react and get your thoughts, right? We have the poll in tonight's chat. And it is, how are you feeling after this loss? Option number 1, it's just one of 82, and it was a back-to-back, all right? Before I get to the second option, I know everyone's going to be talking about this back-to-back, right? Is it an excuse, right? It's early in the season. I think it's a bit of a cop-out. And I'm not going to crash out over a loss like this, right? It is one of 82, but you want to show up. You have to show up in these games, right? Orlando came in like a team that's the contender, and we are not the champions, but we are the favorites. And so you've got a young, feisty, hungry, contender that comes into your building early in the season, right? And Paolo Banchero said they had this game, circled on their calendar, right? As we get through everyone in the box score and shout you guys out, welcome in to the post game as the New York Knicks now move to 7-4 on the season. Jalen Brunson, Cat both had 5 fouls. The Knicks made a couple of runs as they went down 107 to 124, right? Giving up 124 to an Orlando Magic team that ain't that good is concerning, right? So the second option is didn't show up, and that is concerning, right? Have your say. Replay squad as well. Salute everyone in the building. Johnny Chiba, Chris Gotti, Grays, and Buzzer Beater. Everyone coming through. Salute Knicks diehards. Option number 3 is they'll learn from this wake up. That's another way to look at it. Obviously, you're still figuring out who you are as a team. This team has shown some flaws. They've been excellent offensively, but defensively is our Achilles. It's our weakness, right? And I'm going to talk about Mitchell Robinson, obviously in the spotlight, because, with that said, we did have Mitch come back. He was rested last night, but, it didn't really have much of an impact, right? Mitch just didn't look like Mitch tonight, and the fact that he sat the other night. Look, he was okay, but I just felt like, I was expecting more of an impact, right? 1 of 82, we'll see what happens. But the shots didn't go down, and offensively, I'm not fazed. I can deal with a game where you don't, shoot the ball well. But to be down 42-62, at the half is absolutely terrible, right? Second night of a back-to-back, their legs weren't there. OG, I thought, was pretty terrible defensively. Franz Wagner was eating and having his way. Fourth option, last but not least, is we have to win these games, right? So just 1 of 82 and a back-to-back. Second option, we didn't show up. That's concerning. Third option, we'll learn from this wake-up. And fourth option, you got to win these games. You got to win these games, fam. Now, we could still be in a dogfight for the top 1, top 2 seeds. It's early days, but I'm looking at really how the Knicks are going to respond to the next 2, right? You got a lot of doubters and haters talking about, we beat up on the Brooklyn Nets, we beat up on, the Memphis Grizzlies, and that today was a real test, and the Knicks weren't up to it, right? Orlando's size has given us problems in the past. They have got a little bit better shooting. I mean, I got to say tonight they shot the absolute lights out. Wendell Carter couldn't miss. As Brunson started strong, had 11 points in the first quarter. But really, the Knicks cut it to 10 with a Jordan Clarkson 3, but a couple of really sloppy turnovers, right, really hurt us. So that is real frustrating, fam. Chris Gotti says we weren't going to go undefeated at MSG. Yeah, absolutely. It's just the way they lost this game was frustrating. Made a couple of good runs, but I mean, outside of that, Orlando had the answer to every single run that we were making. Gray's Salute says, I'm not sure who had the home court advantage, the Orlando Magic or the refs. It wasn't the Knicks. There should be an investigation. I don't like to make excuses in terms of it was a blowout, but yeah, the refs were terrible tonight. You're not wrong at all. Buzzer Beater says Anthony Black and Bane look like Steph and Clay. We made them look good, fam. And again, I think getting into foul trouble really hampered our ability to play more aggressive defense. But look, they were aggressive. And for those that, were kind of more frustrated in terms of asking, how the Knicks offense was slowed down. Well, Orlando was switching. Orlando was switching everything, and it was really throwing us off. With their length, they could stay in front of guys, and that is something we are going to learn from. It is something we're going to have to, get better at as well. And we will. Obviously, you're not going to win every game. There's going to be a lot more tests to come. There's not that many teams in the league that's really going to be able to slow the Knicks offense down. So you do got to give Orlando credit. They played an incredible game. They did circle this game on their calendar, and defensively they showed up. They played prison ball, which is the way I like to refer. They were super physical. Knicks should have got a couple more trips to the foul line. There's no doubt about it, right? Brunson was hacked. Cat was hacked a couple of times, but they let it get into their heads. Get back on defense and guard up. That's the biggest difference, guys. Calls go your way sometimes, they go against you, but you got to get back on defense and show that effort. And tonight, we just didn't have the legs, right? So my conclusion is it's a bit of everything. I think Orlando played a great game. We weren't up to it, but the back-to-back didn't help us, and neither did the referees. But yeah, we are going to have to learn to fight through that. His cat should have got that and one call right here. Susan, salute. Good to see you. Says the game was a reality check for the Knicks and Coach Brown. That's a good way to say it, but 6 in a row that, definitely people would have been jumping out the window talking about the 1 seed, the championship, the finals. It is good to get a reality check from time to time. As we pick the bones out of this one, guys, I'm more kind of like absolutely miffed in terms of where our defense went. Mitchell Robinson was rested last night, right? You could have just played Mitch last night. He only played 17 minutes tonight after being rested, right? What's your thoughts about that, right? Mitch didn't really look like himself tonight. 8 rebounds, 5 offensive is excellent from Mitch. His standards, but minus 11, 2 points, 4 fouls. Bataze, Wendell Carter, those guys were setting good picks. I thought Mitchell Robinson was obviously playing up on the screen. He was icing a lot of the pick and roll coverages, and the Knicks were trying to recover, and then they just weren't able to recover fast enough. And, it was leaving a lot of the Orlando shooters, wide open. So, our defense, a lot of people talking about, we need Mitch out there to be our best defensively. Well, I'm kind of a loss for words in terms of tonight. Was it just a back-to-back? Because the Orlando Magic's offense ain't great. Now, granted, they are starting to pick things up. I think they are 4 out of their last 6 now. I think they were 4 out of their last 5. They were 4 out of their last 5. So they're 5 out of their last 6 now, something like that, right? Chris says instead of playing Yabu, I think Brown should have gone to Huck to combat Orlando's size. That's a fair point, Chris, but I don't think Yabu really played enough to make that much of an impact. Yabu only played 5 minutes, fam. So I think defensively our starters were really poor. It wasn't the bench so much. Granted, Hart was minus 16, right? He was getting abused as well. I thought Shamet had an excellent game. Really need to give a shout out to Landry Shamet. I thought his 11 points really helped us get back into the game and make that run. Clarkson, it was kind of a classic, amazing heat check Clarkson game and then giving it away on the other side. Clarkson just, really was a typical Jordan Clarkson in 10 minutes. Miles McBride, I thought, had a poor defensive game. So did OG Anunoby. Mikal Bridges wasn't himself defensively either, minus 19. I mean, you got to look to your leaders when you lose these games. And I'm looking at, Mitch minus 11, Midi minus 19, JB minus 20, and Hart minus 16. You see the minus 3 for Shamet in 27 minutes. That lets you know that he was very productive when he was on the floor. Cat was a minus 2 in his 34 minutes. So the Knicks made some runs with Cat on the floor. OG Anunoby was minus 1 out there. I think he had a better second half. But yeah, basically the Knicks fell into that early hole, and it was just too much to come back from, right, on the second of a back-to-back. I think they set the tone early when they blocked Brunson. Paolo Banchero, as I say, only played the first quarter, but he was locked in. And if Paolo had been able to finish this game, man, it would have been more than 20, right? Joe Brown says excuses won't win championships. Same old Knicks. Any team that's somewhat good, they lose. I think playoffs, obviously, the Knicks, I think, changed that narrative, but regular season, that narrative is still around. Regular season, physical teams come in. But also the way you could look at it is this is round 1 of the season series. Let's see how they bounce back against Orlando, right? This is the first game. We are going to see Orlando a lot more, and we are obviously going to, have a chance to get back against Miami. And let's see how they bounce back in this one. But look, even throughout that win streak, guys, I wasn't really feeling like we had, become world beaters. Defensively, there's still those issues. And when Cat's on the floor, the tendency to get into the foul trouble. Brunson's not a strong defender either, although he gave you great effort, drawing those late charges and making that run. Anthony Black was a killer as well. Jose G, salute. 17 points from Black definitely was hurting us. And I also feel like Wendell Carter, fam, right? Now, to make a further point, let's pull up the stats from tonight's ball game, man. Everyone in the building, appreciate you for rocking with us. Win or lose, diehards in the building, right? This is a big season for the New York Knicks, and we're all locked in, right? We take any loss seriously. We take any win seriously with this one because teams are coming, and 7-4 is a solid start. And I think these next 2-3 games as we hit the road is really going to set the tone, right? Fast break points were quite even. Second chance points, man, was an absolute killer. The Knicks got 11. Orlando had 16 second chance points. Points in the paint were quite even, but the 14 turnovers was a killer. Orlando was moving the ball well, 29 dimes. The Knicks only had 20, right? But I wanted to bring this up. As you see the wire to wire, the Knicks were coming from behind all night long. And it was unlike any other game really this season where the Knicks just couldn't get it below 10. And the reason for that is this, is I'm going to blow this up. Fam, look at Orlando's shot chart right here. Fam, look at all of Orlando's buckets. And I'm specifically honing in on the restricted area. My God, that is ugly. Look at all those buckets given up in the restricted area from putback after putback, layup after layup. The New York Knicks, once they got into foul trouble, man, they just could not defend a mannequin tonight. And I do put it down to the foul trouble, the back-to-back, and also the size of the Orlando Magic. From Isaac to Bataze to Franz Wagner to Paolo Early, Wendell Carter as well. The Knicks were just absolutely bullied in the paint, right? And it's an eyesore to see that many buckets, given up. And if we are going to win a championship, guys, we need to correct that. We need to correct this defensively. David M says, rough night for all. These guys went clubbing last night. I think Orlando took this game really seriously, fam. I saw a video pre-game, I think in the shoot-around this morning, about Paolo Banchero saying that he had this game circled, fam. So that lets you know that we are being taken seriously, fam, as the benchmark in the East. Teams are looking at us saying, man, how can we knock them off our perch? And the New York Knicks, right, aren't the number one seed, but I don't think people are really looking at the Detroit Pistons with the same way that they're looking at the New York Knicks, right? As the Knicks were rolling, undefeated at home, 5 in a row, and Orlando came in and spoiled the party tonight. Now we got to get right against the Miami Heat, right? So let's check in on our poll, right? How do y'all feel after the loss? Coming in at the top option right now is didn't show up, and that's concerning at 46%. Close behind at 31% is it's just one of 82 and a back-to-back, right? So people, looking at it rationally, but also concerning that we didn't show up. Third is we have to win these games, 15%. 8% say they'll learn from this wake-up. So, yeah, look, defensively, they undressed us with the buckets that they were getting, right? So let's then pull up the box score again and look at ways that Mike Brown could have really changed this ball game, right? They didn't have the energy, fair enough. Third quarter, I was looking for them to make that run, and they made a run. They cut it to 11, and then Orlando answered back, and they pushed it back out, I think, which was a backbreaker, right? Great point earlier about Yabusele, but I don't think he played enough minutes, so I think Mitchell Robinson only playing 17, Cat playing 34 minutes and getting into foul trouble, was tough for us. Johnny Chiba says if Cat could just stop whining, stop the cheap fouls, and not force the action awkwardly against the double, he's a phenomenal player. I agree with you, Johnny Chiba. Great point. Again, Cat is just such a polarizing player, but he's so skilled and so dominant at times, but on the defensive side, it is tough. It is just a rough night. We just got to bury it, right, and bounce back. Look, for the most part, we've been rolling, but we have been playing a softer schedule, right? The way Susan's looking at it is it was an ego check for the New York Knicks. Don't get the so-called underdogs to be slept on. Bodega Prime Salute says it's November. Yep. Yeah, it's good to see. I don't think I see anyone really overreacting too much. You want to win these games. It's frustrating. And the way we were climbing from downhill all game, it is frustrating, definitely. But you also got to look at it like it is one of 82. It is second of a back-to-back. And I hate saying that. I don't want to make that an excuse. I think the game was physical, though, and there are certain matchups that we just struggle with the extra physicality. and we are going to learn to combat that. I do feel like, these are probably one of the games where we're missing an extra ball handler, fam, as we pull up the roster right now. Should we have played Deuce McBride more minutes? That is a possibility. More Deuce, McCall, Brunson, 3-guard alignments. I did think we played a little bit too much Josh Hart for the floor spacing purposes. You see, Orlando were playing incredibly tight on the passing lanes, right? They were fighting through every screen, and they were playing the passing lanes super strong early, and the Knicks just couldn't get any clean shots, right? So you do need maximum floor spacing, right? Once we got a little bit of space late in the game, we made a run. Cat hit some threes, JC hit some threes, with Mitch and Hart off the floor. Unfortunately, McCall had a couple of timely buckets that just didn't go down, right? And then the 2 Deuce McBride turnovers, I think, was a killer as well at the wrong time. Look, I think Shamet was excellent tonight. Got to give my shout outs to Landry Shamet. I mean, he's certainly earning his minutes, and we on to the next one, fam. Can't really overreact to this one too much. AP Salute says CT had to have this one. Now we can be on the 3-game skid because of the Miami back-to-back, and will never seem to beat in the big game. Tonight was a national TV game, fam. I was watching MSG, but obviously it was on ESPN, and the haters are perking up, the trolls are coming out now, but I ain't getting it twisted. I think the Knicks will lock in when these games are not a back-to-back. Now we are playing that 9-man rotation. Yeah, Mike Brown's still learning a lot about this team, right? If we've seen these kind of losses last season under Thibodeau, so I think this is more of a roster flaw combined with the back-to-back. The extra size and physicality can be an Achilles for the New York Knicks. Deuce McBride, Brunson, they are undersized. Cat, not a defender, or not a tenacious defender, and Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby. We really need those guys to step up more in these kind of games and make their, impose their will, on these games more physically, right? With OG and Mikal, like you saw Orlando, right? I mean, they don't really have a whole lot of hoopers, in my opinion. Franz Wagner's probably their best player. I don't think Paolo Banchero is their best player. Well, he's not playing like it. He has the highest upside. But how do y'all feel about Orlando? Do y'all think that Franz Wagner is their most talented player? Or do y'all think it's Paolo? Jose G with the great insight. My guy says, CT, these guys just had 3 nights off in a row. CT. Okay. I didn't know that, fam. That's why you're a legend, fam. Appreciate you for that. I do think, they did circle this on their calendar, fam. And yeah, they came out hard. They treated this like a playoff game. Clearly the New York Knicks didn't. So yeah, I'm not too worried about it moving forward. But I do think these kind of teams will be the ones that gives us trouble. Now, let me make a comparison, guys. The Minnesota game, right? That's the reason why I'm not that worried, because Minnesota are a more talented version of the Orlando Magic, right? They have Rudy Gobert, they have Anthony Edwards, they have shooters, they have physicality, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid. We blew them out. We blew them out in the second half. So, had this not been a back-to-back, probably would have been a lot closer, and, had guys performed better, we definitely can take it to Orlando and beat them anytime. And so, yeah, I'm looking at that Minnesota game, and I thought we really did well to dispel any of that narrative that the Knicks struggle against physicality. Guys just weren't on tonight. Tendrell Salute says Faulo Banchero. I like that. Grays says Franz is the most reliable scorer, in my opinion. Yeah, appreciate that because he does look awkward. The way, his ISO game is pretty average in my opinion. He's just got the size. I mean, size can prevail over anything if you do have that reach. And even OG was struggling, um, to really, you know, overcome that, fam. Xavier Avils, appreciate you for the contribution. Says, Bing Bong, play the song. Appreciate you for the contribution, fam. Haven't seen you in the building previously, but I'm not sure if you're more of an Orlando guy, but appreciate you, man, coming through. Right, Orlando, are a team that has been underachieving last season, but we all know that their ceiling is a lot higher. The Desmond Bain pickup has been a little slow coming along, but they're really starting to pick up steam. AP says CT Detroit is really a 10-2 team. Yeah, you can look at the regular season and look at it like, we're comparing teams versus teams, but we all know when the playoffs come, ladies and gentlemen, the boys get separated from the men when it comes to the playoffs, right? The Knicks got clowned last season. Oh, we couldn't beat Cleveland. We couldn't beat Boston. And what happened? We sent Boston packing when the games really counted the most. So we have ballers that come to play when the games and the stakes are the highest, right? And Jalen Brunson, man, I believe in him to carry us. And also Karl Anthony Towns do have some big games, right? Xavier, says Magic fan, but respect, man, all love. I just can't stand the Knicks. Fair enough, man. I love the rivalry. I think it makes the NBA a lot better. And yeah, Xavier, I've been one of the guys that been saying that, the NBA is a new season every year. And I didn't buy into this narrative that it's going to be Knicks, Cleveland, and nobody else, right? I did think that one of these other teams, like, ATL, Indiana, ATL, Detroit, Orlando, maybe even Milwaukee, were going to make a statement this season. Now, I didn't expect, Chicago got off to a good start, but I didn't expect Orlando. Detroit. I didn't expect Detroit, to look this hot. But I do think Detroit's kind of benefited from a softer schedule, right? And I can't be one to talk because the Knicks just beat up on Brooklyn. We beat up on Memphis. The truth is, guys, there's a lot of bad teams. There's a lot of awful teams in the NBA this season. And, there are, going to be a hell of a lot of wins had in the East, right? And that's probably why you see Milwaukee, looking decent. You're seeing some of these other teams, like Miami. Nobody expected them, to look that good. So yeah, we've got everyone coming through, man. The Knicks are the giants in the East. Susan says Pistons are not to be slept on. I'm not sleeping on the Pistons at all. I just think when push comes to shove, I'm confident. Right? I'm not cocky, but as a Knicks fan, you got to be confident still. We do have a great team. Is it going to be a cakewalk? Absolutely not. Never expected it to be. Man, this is going to be the playoffs. When the playoffs come, first round, second round, third round, anything can happen. The positive thing is it does look like Indiana are out of the way. It does look like the Boston Celtics are kind of going to be out of the way, right? As I'm going to pull up the action from around the league, and we're not going to stew on tonight's game too much. I don't even really want to give out these grades. I've shouted out the guys that I felt, helped the Knicks out, making these runs. Clarkson had his moments. Landry Shamet had his moments. I thought maybe Deuce McBride should have played more minutes. Hart less minutes. But yeah, like you guys say, Pistons picked up another win. The Bulls another loss. So the Bulls are in a tailspin, man. They've lost like 4 out of their last 5, or 3 out of their last 4. We'll take a look at the standings. But look, shout out to the Pistons. You keep things together. They're going to make, organic improvements with Cade, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duran as well. Major upset. The Charlotte Hornets are starting to maybe turn the corner with some of their youth, picking up a big win over the Bucks. Let me check whether Giannis played in this one. That'll be interesting to see. And of course, as I expected, Giannis did not play. So, yeah, nothing to really overreact with that one. Let's see what else happened tonight, man. My God, the Boston Celtics 131 over 95 the Memphis Grizzlies, man. That coach is on borrowed time when it comes to the brand new coach. Or is it going to be Ja Morant? I think that organization has got to make a serious decision, fam. Johnny Chiba says Franz has hands. Yeah, yeah. In the cookie jar tonight, man, they were definitely getting steals and the passing lanes. Mark says the Knicks didn't look tough. Look, second night of a back-to-back. It's easy, I think, to circle the game on the calendar and come and pick the Knicks off. But I don't want to make that as an excuse. I think the Knicks got to be better. It's still early in the season under the new coach. I really felt like we needed more out of Mikal Bridges OG tonight. AP agrees, says Mikal OG didn't have it. Shout out to Ernest, says we got bullied, plain and simple. Bridges is still weak. Look, I think Bridges had an outstanding season, Ernest. You're entitled to your opinion, most definitely. I do think Mikal Bridges, does need to impose more physicality on the game. I wouldn't go as far as to call him weak. I do think size is an issue with some of these guys. You got Franz, Wendell Carter, Anthony Black. Johnny Chiba says dimes were lacking tonight. Passing lanes, fam. They played a great defensive game. I said this before when we hired Mike Brown, right? There are going to be those nights where we get 40 assists, the ball's flowing, the movement looks on point, and you can do that against teams that aren't aggressive. But against teams like Miami, teams like Orlando, even Milwaukee gave us problems. When you switch a lot and you play the passing lanes, you can't just be throwing that ball around, man. The Knicks were getting a lot of turnovers, right? They need guys to take the ball by the horn and create a shot, make a play, right? Take your man to the rack, get to the foul line. Some of these games are going to be ugly. Some of these games need to be physical, and they need to be like a prison ball game. And that's just the way you have to approach it. Some games are going to be won pretty. Some other games need to be won ugly. And I don't think, and I say this with respect to Orlando, I don't think you're going to win a game that's pretty against Orlando, right? You can't be having no 40 assist games against the Orlando Magic. They've got too much depth, too much size and length. I think defensively, that make things disruptive. Now, what we needed from Mike Brown is to call some more set plays. As I pull up the coaches talk. Actually, before we do that, we'll just take a look at the other games, fam. Cleveland with a big win over the Heat. Okay, so they'll be looking for a get back. The Warriors look set to possibly get the win over the Spurs. The Rockets going to pick up a straightforward victory, and the Trailblazers look like they'll get that victory right over the who was that against? That was against the Pels, fam. Oh, and you still got some other games. You got the Mavericks, Thunder. You've got Mavericks, Suns, Thunder, Lakers. Yeah, those games are still in action. So yeah, let me pull up the highlights back up. Yep, let me get this back up again for these highlights. Jose G says Cat sometimes doesn't play like he's an NBA star player. Fam, I think defensively, you've got to put Cat in better positions, to succeed. I think there was a little bit of drop coverage tonight, and again, we've seen that before. We needed to do more of what Orlando did, which is ice the pick, switch everything. It worked a lot in the playoffs. Buzzer beater says CT. I was thinking the same thing. How we respond to Miami will say a lot. Mark says we need to go deeper into the bench. I think that's a fair point. You know, you lose a couple in a row. I would like to see some guys get a shot, especially Diawara. So yeah, we're on to the coaches chat, right? I think it's polar narratives. Last night was Mike Brown, man. He's the bee's knees. You know, Knicks breaking franchise records, 130 plus. Tonight there's going to be a lot of people talking about, yeah, he should have done this, should have done that. I do think if we lose a couple in a row, Mike Brown might look to switch things up a little bit. Maybe less Yabusele, maybe some Trey Jemison, Huck Porty, or Diawara. Now, I think we have to find that balance, fam, between defense and offense. Right, as I pull up the roster, right? We have too many guys that I think are more one side of the ball, like Yabusele right now, Karl Anthony Towns, Brunson, Hart. I think we need to balance it out. We've got a lot of offensive-minded guys with Brunson and Clarkson. We need to play more guys like Deuce McBride, right? Landry Shamet. They'll give you a bit of everything on both sides, right? So could we see a little bit more of Diawara? He's shown some flashes, knocked down a couple of threes. I think he deserves a shot because I think his defense length could help balance out some of the deficiencies of the other guys. And yeah, you know, Yabusele is that guy that, you know, he might just be that punching bag as the season goes along. I think defensively, McCullough is a guy that can give us a bit of everything. You know, people might say he's unproven, but how are you going to find out if you don't, you know, give these guys somewhat of a chance? I did really like what I saw from Trey Jemison early in the season. So, look, I'm not making wholesale changes just yet. It's one loss, but yeah, something to keep in mind as we go along, fam. We do have a talented roster, but, you know, it is somewhat, you know, top 8 heavy, top 8, top 9 heavy, and then it kind of drops off significantly from experience, from proven commodity. You got guys like Kolek, like I said, Diawara, Jemison, Tosan, Dardier, McCullough, a lot of guys that, you know, are young, and I think, you know, we are going to talk about it when we get to it, but obviously I think February, the trade deadline, I do see the Knicks signing someone, you know, in April as the 15th man, or if not before that, I think they'll make a trade. What are your thoughts on that, guys? As we check in on the poll, 45% say the Knicks didn't show up, and that's concerning. 32% say it's just one of 82, and it's a back-to-back. 14% say they'll learn from the wake-up. 9% say they have to win these games. Buzzer says Cat cannot rely on the whistle. He needs to grow his bag. Where's his spin move under the basket? I think Cat's one of those guys that, yeah, is suffering from the second of the back-to-back. OG is the same. You know, that was the same as last season. Jose says, Cat's missed dunk tonight was a wide-open baseline drive, man. I know he's human, but geesh. That was a great moment in the game, man. Well, not a great moment, but that was a key moment. Man, that would have changed the game, in my opinion, if Cat hit that open jam, fam. But I guess that proves my point. He just didn't have the legs. He didn't have the legs. David says, I'm cool to give Mo D some minutes. I think he'll get his shot this season, fam. You know, swap out Yabusele's minutes for Diawara. Right. We see Yabu knock down a 3, but yeah, I thought he played much better last night. Did Yabu. You know, tonight, nothing really on the second of the back-to-back. Look, Brunson was Brunson early. A couple of turnovers were costly, but look, I don't think this loss is on Brunson by any means. Susan says the Knicks have to realise that they are a target to be beat this season. Again, the refs, some of them just don't like the Knicks and New York City, period. We just have to fight over that, fam. It's us against the world. David says, I saw Jose Alvarado's name getting floated around as a potential trade. I would love it. You know, that would be a solid fit, David, from a roster standpoint, physicality, moxie. He's from New York City as well, Puerto Rico, via Puerto Rico. Represent Jose Alvarado would be, I think, a name to look out for. But I do think you're on the same track, that I think the Knicks will be looking for a defensive perimeter kind of guy, a guy who could create, defend, I think. As I said before, more guys like Deuce McBride, more guys like Landry Shamet, more guys like Diawara. I think we need more guys like that. Now, you look at guys like Josh Hart. Okay, Hart's kind of the guy that we know is dealing with the hand, right? So he's been on a tear recently. But yeah, you know, this is Josh Hart in a nutshell. He can be the difference between winning and losing on most nights, right? So that is polarizing, fam. Him, Yabusele, OG, Macau Bridges. I think for the most part, you know what you're going to get out of Cat. You know what you're definitely going to get out of JB. When it comes to Hart, OG, Macau, Yabu, and I would probably still put Mitch in there because, look, Mitch, when he's super impactful, is dominant. But he does have these games where, you know, he's not as impactful. And so those are the guys that I feel like just need to be more consistent, you know, if you want to win that championship with these guys, you know. There needs to be a smaller gap between their best and their worst. You know, it just can't be they're amazing and then they fall off a cliff. You know, if you want to win that championship, you got to look to the guys that, you know, produce night in, night out, right? You can't take a night off, right? In this jungle of a league, it is an absolute jungle. Right? Teams look, like Susan said, teams looking to take a scalp. Mark says, but those guys are just not consistent. Susan says the West Conference are really tall. Look, yeah, the length and the size is something we're going to have to overcome, and we did okay in the playoffs. I think Detroit, they threw everything in the kitchen sink at the New York Knicks, man. Osar Thompson was fouling the heck out of JB. They didn't have beef stew, but Jalen Duren was going head to head with Cat. You know, we overcame that battle. The season before that, it was a battle against Philly. We overcame that. So I'm still confident. When the playoffs come, these guys lock in to another level. They're just not at that level when it comes to regular season. Orlando, they really locked in tonight. So it says a lot about them, but it says a lot about us. You know, that, you know, we can't drop our standards. 5 in a row, homestand, you needed to come in, capitalize, and keep this streak rolling. But it is what it is, fam. Second night of the back-to-back. And so we move, and I'm going to bring up the standings right now. We take a look at that. Shout out to everyone in the building. Hit that like button, and you got the Knicks streets buzzing, right? So the New York Knicks, they slide, one spot, right? They slide one spot, tied with Philly now, 7-4, which is, I would have signed up for that to start the season. 7-4 is a solid start, but we have taken advantage of a softer schedule. Guys, it has been a kind of a softer schedule. Washington, Brooklyn, Memphis, and these kind of games. Chicago, we got our get back. Now we're really going to be having some serious conversations, I think, over the next 5 games, fam. The Heat 7-5, so it's good to see them drop a game. Great to see the Bucks drop a game as well. So those guys both fall to 7-5. and the New York Knicks are half a game ahead, right? We're still within great striking distance of Cleveland, 2nd seed, Pistons, the 1 seed as well. We'll see how long that they can keep it up. But as I pull up the schedule right now, I think, as I said before, we're going to be having some serious conversations with this schedule coming up, right? Miami. So we've got a day off. We've got the NBA Cup, which we lost the first NBA Cup matchup against the Bulls. So if we do want to advance in this NBA Cup, or for whatever reason, we just need to bounce back, that Miami game, I think the Knicks will come hard. I think they'll really come to play in that game. So I'm confident of a bounce back. How are you guys feeling about the next matchup, right? I don't want to get too far ahead because I do think the Knicks just need to focus game to game, right? Take our lumps, have that night off tomorrow. Friday night Knicks, the Garden's going to be buzzing. We are half a game ahead of the Heat, so that is going to be a big swing in the season standings as we face them in the NBA Cup. Susan says, I would be upset if this was March, but the Knicks will be fine. Yeah, appreciate that. AP says, how did OKC build such a powerhouse? 81-1. Man, they fleeced the Clippers in that trade, fam. The Clippers done screwed most of us by giving up their draft capital. We own the tiebreaker because of the home record, AP says. Yeah, the next game, AP, is the big matchup, the 2 against Miami. Look, Dallas is struggling, and then the third game of the West Coast trip or road trip is Orlando, and then we got Brooklyn again, and then we got the Charlotte Hornets. So look, we're in a good position to build on, and we best build on this 7-4 start. Right, I don't want to slump back down to 500. Right, there's going to be serious questions if the Knicks fall back down to 500. I want us to take this situation and build, right? Get up to, 12 and, let's say we go 12-6, something like that, right? So we're 7-4. I want us to go to something like, 11-6, 10-5, something like that, right? 7-4 is a good platform to build. I think that Miami game next, I think we'll win. Back in South Beach, I think obviously it's tough, man. These home and homes to win the second of a home and home is going to be tough. So I think we'll win the first Miami game. The second one will be a coin flip. That'll be a pick'em. And then Dallas on the road. I think Brunson's return, Casey Smith back in the building. That's going to be a fun game. Cooper Flagg, Anthony Davis is out. They fired Nico Harrison, man. The wheels are falling off of Dallas. We need to capitalize and get that one. And then Orlando in Disney World. We need to get our get back again. And then we come back to Brooklyn and Charlotte, Milwaukee as we conclude the NBA Cup, fam. And then then we're back home against Toronto with RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly coming back into the building. So yeah, I'm seeing a whole lot of wins in this stretch, right? You might think I'm overconfident, but I like our chances in this stretch. So let's look at the Miami getting back on the right track. And then Dallas, Orlando, Brooklyn, Charlotte, Milwaukee, Toronto, man. We should at least be picking up 4 to 5 wins out of that stretch, right? No back-to-backs. There's a game off, and between Dallas, Orlando, which is great. There's 2 games off. So maybe we'll have a chance to pick out Orlando coming off a back-to-back, right? Wouldn't that be nice? But yeah, interesting to see what Mike Brown says about this one. We've got a super chat through from Jose G Insight, my guy. Got the streets buzzing. Jose says, JB's ankle is weak. CT hurt again and out for Miami. I see. Let's hope not, man. He does take a lot of hits. He does, pull up for that mid-range and does tend to fall on the ankle, which is a concern. But look, we signed up for this, fam. I knew that Brunson was probably going to miss a handful of games, and we have the roster now that we have to deal with. We just need more guys to step up. Shout out to Landry. He stepped up tonight. I need more from Clarkson, Yabu, Hart, OG. These guys need to take this seriously, man, and really step up. David says, question is, does Nico get another job in the NBA? I think he's cooked. Man, he's cooked. He had the support of the ownership to make that trade, but then he absolutely flamed out, crashed out in that one as the trade completely backfired, man. They're going to have to trade Kyrie, I think, or they're going to have to trade Clay, fam. But yeah, let's see how we do against Dallas as JB goes back home and tries to pick off the win. Yeah, so Mitchie's in the spotlight for me. Rested last night. I was expecting a huge game. You know, he was great on the glass, but defensively, I can't put it all on Mitch because our defense was poor as a team. But I'm more disappointed that we were so bad defensively as a team. And I was kind of hoping that Mitch coming back would, at the very least, mask a lot of our deficiencies. But I think we just got bullied offensively by the Orlando Magic. Their size, finishing over guys, and their length. Now, maybe it's just one of those nights that they shot hot, and the next game they won't. Let's hope. Let's see how it all goes in the next one. But yeah, with Jose's comment, fam, with JB's ankle, let me do a update and just refresh and see the reactions from the locker room. Right? As you know, look, Jalen Brunson started the season amazing. As Steph Bondi has commented his reporting, fam, as I'll post this in the chat. Jalen Brunson appeared to turn his ankle at the end of tonight's loss. He did not speak to the media. So that's coming from Steph Bondi of the Daily News. Prayers up for Cat. Ian Begley says, Mike Brown says Brunson turned his ankle at the end of the game, but he doesn't know more than that. So yeah, we'll see. Obviously, I feel like he'll be questionable or doubtful, maybe even, questionable for the next one, I would suggest. Yeah, we are going to have some other guys step up. Maybe Kolek gets some minutes. Maybe Deuce gets the start. You know, look, Deuce is a weapon, and I do feel like we're in a good situation with our depth. Guys just got to step up, right? We saw this heading into tonight, guys, the net rating around the league. Look, Knicks kings of the East in terms of the net ratings, right? But it's early days. And today the Orlando Magic did show that we do have some vulnerabilities. Mark says Brunson was ticked off at the official. He absolutely was, man. He does seem to kind of get into a personal battle every time we do play Detroit, we play Orlando, fam. Those guys that like to talk and are physical with Jalen Suggs, Desmond Bain, you know, those guys on Detroit as well. But one thing we know and love about Brunson is he's up for the task. You know, he comes to play. So yeah, last night's court, man, it was beautiful. We had the City Edition unis in the court, fam. Last night was a high ride. Tonight, man, we come crashing back down, but 7-4, as I said, third seed, solid start, not setting the world on fire. But if you had offered me a 7-4 start before the season, I would have said, okay, fair enough, I'll take it. Right, 7-4, but let's see whether we fall back down to 500 now when we go on the road, or we can push on and really get some separation, right? Roll some of the highlights from last night and the 19-0 run, man. was some of the prettiest offense I've ever seen. But you look at how the Grizzlies look tonight against the Celtics, losing by 40, right? So you got to take that one last night with a grain of salt. AP says CT, Leon is going to have to figure out the Mitch Robinson problem. This guy is a question mark every year, and I'm getting tired. We need someone to play every day. You've been definitely consistent, with your thoughts on that. I think it's just the point where, it is what it is with Mitch. I think it was the right decision to sit him last night. Look, tonight, 17 minutes. I think he's the kind of guy that he's clearly saving for the playoffs. He's that guy that you save for the playoffs. They're the most important games. And the thing is with Mitch, you take the good and the bad from my perspective because he's on a decent salary. He's not on a crazy salary. There is a lot of guys that are more injury prone, also earning a bigger bag. Tendrell says start Clarkson. I think Deuce McBride might get a chance, fam, or maybe even Josh Hart. But I think we probably do got to start a point guard. So you probably start Deuce McBride and Kolek and Clarkson. I think play some minutes together off the bench. AP says, I say we finish in 4th or 5th, 52 wins. I would hope that we finish a lot higher, fam, than 4th, but 52 wins might be enough to get us 3rd. I'd be slightly underwhelmed with 3rd. I think 2nd or 1st needs to be the target, fam. Mark says Brunson has 2 black eyes. Yeah, you love Brunson's physicality. He definitely tries to fight, through the size limitation. But again, I think there's one glaring weakness with the roster, and I think that's just another, shot creator, ball handler. It could come from the 2 guard spot or the 1 guard spot. There's so many names you could throw out there. Colin Sexton, Alec Burks to a lesser extent. One of those kind of guys. Jose Alvarado. One more guy like that. We had Malcolm Brogdon. He was by no means the answer, but he was the kind of guy that the front office felt like that this squad needs. And I 100% agree with that. It's a shame that Brogdon retired, and we'll never know. Maybe Brogdon would have been a 0 and a non-factor, but we definitely need to fill that void, right? As we see here, right? No surprises, man. Bradley Beal, just in, ladies and gentlemen, from today, earlier, the Clippers guard Bradley Beal, man, has suffered, right, a fracture in the hip and will undergo season-ending surgery, man. The Clippers are in a world of hurt right now, and so far so good for us, knock on wood. We haven't really dealt with any injuries yet. Let's hope it stays that way, right? I do think that a trade is going to happen regarding the New York Knicks, and it's going to be more on the margins, but it is going to be a guy that can create a shot, either ball handle and play make. Right? I don't think they're 100% sold on Tyler Kolek being, the next in line. I think him, Pacome Dardier, one of those names to look out for come January, February. Let's see if we can, make a move to get a Jose Alvarado. Maybe we keep all our guys and we wait for the buyout. We wait for the buyout market. Now, my thinking is that they're going to be more aggressive before April, because if we are going to sign the 15th guy, we have to wait till the second last week of the season in April. And that ain't going to be enough time for that player to really gel or integrate with the squad. I think that's leaving it late. And so I do think that they're probably going to be looking to clear up some room, maybe trade 1 or 2 of the young guys, and maybe try to bring in 1 guy via trade, 1 guy via buyout, to add a couple more season-hardened veterans, like a Malcolm Brogdon type. Who that's going to be, I have no idea. But yeah, I do think that's one of the the needs of the roster right now. Or they might look to convert one of the two ways. Trey Jemison is a guy where, okay, you might need another big. You if you created two spots, you could bring Trey Jemison in. You could sign another two-way guy to replace him. Either way, I do think with Mitch's limited availability, cat's foul tendency, question marks over Huck Porty, I do think, they might need to look at the big situation. What are your thoughts on that? Susan says it's going down in the Feb trade deadline. Jose says OG played 33 and only had 4 field goal attempts. How is that possible? Yeah, let me pull up the box score again. Yeah, you're 100% right, man. Great point. I do think OG just didn't look himself to this on the second of a back-to-back quite a lot. Look, he gave you 2 blocks and a steal, 3 turnovers. He just wasn't showing for the ball enough. But I think, you got to give credit to the defense, Jose. I do think Orlando blanketed OG. They know how important he is. And, he was in the corner a lot. They played the passing lanes. Orlando made the court shrink with their wingspan and their size. We are just going to have to be more aggressive. And, as I say, it is going to be a case of make a play, force the issue. Some games are going to be ugly. Some games you're going to have to win, physical and junk it up, muddy it up, right? You can't win pretty all the time. And Orlando were looking at our offense saying, no, we're not going to allow 133. So to their credit, they got the dub. They played well. Does it change my thinking in terms of the East, the landscape? Hell no. I do think this is round 1. You could look at the season series. Knicks Orlando, round 1 goes to the Magic. Let's see what happens in round 2 as we face them in Florida next week or the week after that. So you're heading into tonight, right? Jalen Brunson has been on a record tear. He'd taken 187 field goals this season with the highest average shot quality in his entire Knicks career. The fewest percentage of field goal attempts heavily contested in his Knicks career, and the fewest percentage of field goal attempts self-created in his Knicks career. So Brunson's getting so much more easier looks. Tonight he got a lot of easy looks as well, but the trade-off was that they blanketed a lot of the other guys, so Brunson just had to go isolation, so they did slow our offense down, but you can always go back to the stone cold killer that Brunson is. In a playoff game, I think he would have been more forceful, but he's playing within the offense. And I think, the other guys really got to step it up. I think we are going to see more games like this, fam. What are your thoughts on the new All-Star Weekend format, fam? I know we've been talking about this a lot last season. Buzzer Beater and the fam been talking about the new All-Star format, right? It does look like it's going to be more of a USA versus the world. 3 teams, 2 US and 1 world team. 4 games with 12 minutes each. Man, they're throwing things against the wall just to switch it up. Round robin, each team plays the other 2, right? So you have your multiple games, then you have the championship game. So it's kind of like a mini in-season tournament held on one day, right? So look, anything's better than what was, I think, previously. Maybe these guys will try a little bit harder than, before. USA versus the world, maybe there's more pride. The East versus West thing, it just wasn't working, fam. Is the AP says, I haven't seen the All-Star game in years, man. I definitely don't blame you. They needed to switch something up. Buzzer Beater asks, CT, is playing a back-to-back a sufficient excuse for an NBA team? let alone a contender. Uh, the short answer for me personally is no, it's not an excuse, but it is a circumstance that you can't ignore. So I know that might sound like I'm sitting on the fence, but no, it's absolutely not an excuse. You still need to win if you are a serious contender. But you also can't ignore that if the other team has 3 days rest and you don't, then you do have to look at the result proportionately. And do I think the Orlando Tragic are 20 points better than the New York Knicks? Hell no. Uh, they didn't have Paolo either. If this wasn't a back-to-back, would Orlando still have won? Absolutely, they could have still won. So it's no excuse. But the Knicks clearly weren't their best version of themselves. They weren't. OG Anunoby was just not what he's been looking at. And so, did the Knicks really look at this game and take it with the utmost seriousness? I don't think so. I don't think they really took this game as serious. Maybe they knew on the schedule, hey, we just got to take care of these other games. Whatever happens tonight was a coin flip. And we really look at that Miami game, I think, as a get back. And a good example of that is the first Chicago game. The Knicks lost to Chicago. They got surprised. And what did they do? They answered the call. They bounced back and they bullied the Chicago Bulls at home. So I do think that they're really looking at this Miami game. It all depends on how serious these guys take it. They're putting aside all of the gambling stuff, which I'm not suggesting, but there's referees at stake. There's all sorts of parlays and from the other side. So I never take every game of the NBA regular season seriously. It's anything can happen. Susan says, unfortunately, it might be Dardier that goes out. Hopefully not, but I think we'll have a good grasp of where we sit, come January, February. We might have to make some tough calls for the now and sacrifice, a little bit of the future. Jose, salute everyone coming through tonight. Appreciate you again for the contribution, keeping the streets buzzing. You already know what it is. And look, let's end the poll. Tonight, 48% was the winner. We didn't show up, and that's concerning. Right, that's fair enough. 28% say it's just one of 82 and the back-to-back. 28%. 12% say we've got to win these games. And 12% say they'll learn from this wake-up. Look, that's fair. And I do think that, 7-4, if you guys had the chance to take that, to start the season, putting aside how we looked, would you sign up for a 7-4 start? I personally would have signed up for that. New coach, new system, and all of that. We did have some tricky games to start the season against Cleveland, Miami, Boston. I think we've come out of the first part of the schedule kind of okay. Beat up on a lot of the bad teams, won some tricky games. I do think that Milwaukee game was the one that got away, and the one in South Beach that got away. I think if we had won one of those games, man, we would have been 8-3. Would have been absolutely buzzing at 8-3 if we had won one of those Milwaukee or Miami games, right? But those guys are coming up on the schedule again, so we will have a great chance again to get our get back, fam. So with that said, I'm going to wrap this one up tonight, and we'll be back Friday night for a huge game, man. I cannot state that this game is how big it is coming up in the NBA Cup standing, and obviously the chance to bounce back, right? So the streets will keep buzzing, fam. Bless up to everyone and be well, and we'll see you on Friday night.